The hidden power of suffering and personal growth. You wake up one morning staring at the ceiling, and for a moment you feel absolutely nothing. Not joy, not peace, not even pain, just a dull, gray emptiness. It's the same routine. Get up, go through the motions, push through another day, wondering if anything will ever change. But deep down, there's something gnawing at you, a feeling you can't escape. Something is missing, and then, out of nowhere, life hits you. Maybe it's betrayal, a devastating loss, a failure so overwhelming that it knocks the breath out of you. A moment where everything you thought you were, everything you built crumbles into dust. In that instant, pain isn't just an emotion, it's a force, a fire that scorches away illusions and leaves nothing but raw reality. And suddenly, you have two choices. Let it consume you or use it to become something greater. But here's the paradox. Society tells you suffering is a curse, that happiness is the goal, and pain is something to be avoided at all costs. Numb it, escape it, distract yourself, pop a pill, scroll endlessly, do anything but sit with the discomfort. Yet what if this entire belief system is a lie? What if suffering isn't your enemy but your greatest teacher? Look back through history. The most powerful, unbreakable minds, from Marcus Aurelius to Nietzsche, Viktor Frankl to Carl Jung, were not shaped by comfort. They were forged in suffering. They understood something most people refuse to see. Pain is not the end, it's the beginning. And yet, we live in a world terrified of it. We label struggle as dysfunction, heartbreak as failure, hardship as something to escape. But in doing so, have we unknowingly crippled ourselves? Have we traded resilience for fragility, wisdom for comfort, depth for distraction? Here's the question that no one dares to ask. What if avoiding suffering is the very thing keeping you weak? Hold on to that thought, because what we're about to uncover might change the way you see pain forever. Think about it. From the moment you were born, you were taught, directly or indirectly, that pain is something to run from. A child falls and scrapes their knee. The first instinct? Shh, don't cry, it's okay. A teenager experiences heartbreak for the first time. You'll get over it, just distract yourself. An adult feels lost, drowning in anxiety or depression. Maybe you need medication, maybe you just need a vacation. But no one ever says, sit with it, face it, let the suffering shape you. This is where the deception begins. Modern society, obsessed with instant gratification and endless pleasure, has made suffering taboo. We design lives of comfort, automate inconveniences, and flood ourselves with entertainment to escape even a moment of discomfort. We have a name for everything that causes distress: disorder, dysfunction, trauma response. And while mental health awareness is crucial, there's a fine line between understanding pain and fearing it. This avoidance isn't just personal, it's cultural. We're conditioned to believe that success is about ease, not endurance. That happiness means eliminating discomfort, not mastering it. But here's what the great thinkers of history knew. Suffering isn't just pain. It's a force of transformation. Carl Jung once said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." What did he mean? He meant that without confronting your own suffering, without facing the darkest, most painful aspects of yourself, you will never reach your highest potential. Growth demands struggle. Strength requires hardship. The person who has never faced true suffering is like a blade that has never been sharpened. Dull, fragile, and weak. Friedrich Nietzsche took it even further. He didn't just accept suffering, he embraced it. To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. This is the essence of amor fati, love of fate. Nietzsche believed that instead of resisting hardship, we should love it, because it is the very thing that makes us stronger. And yet, look at the modern world. We live in the most comfortable time in human history, and yet anxiety, depression, and feelings of meaninglessness are at an all-time high. Why? Because the very thing that gives life depth, the struggle, the hardship, the suffering, has been sterilized out of existence. Aldous Huxley predicted this decades ago in Brave New World. He envisioned a future where people would drug themselves into happiness, numb their pain with distractions, and avoid anything that made them uncomfortable. Sound familiar? Today we don't need a dystopian government to sedate us. We do it ourselves. We self-medicate with social media, entertainment, consumerism, and an endless pursuit of pleasure. We've built a world where suffering is seen as failure, where pain is something to escape, not confront. But here's the problem. The more you run from suffering, the weaker you become. Think about the strongest, most resilient people you know, the ones who seem unshakable, who have an aura of wisdom and power. They weren't born that way. They were made through hardship, failure, and moments of despair that would have broken lesser minds. Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the absolute depths of human suffering in the Holocaust, said this: "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." He saw firsthand that suffering is not what destroys people. Lack of meaning does. Those who survived the concentration camps were not the physically strongest, but the ones who could find purpose in their suffering. But here's where it gets dangerous. The modern world doesn't teach people how to suffer. It teaches them how to avoid it. We are raising generations who have never endured real hardship, who crumble under pressure, who expect life to be fair and easy, but life is neither fair nor easy, and those who are unprepared for suffering are doomed to be consumed by it. So here's the brutal truth. The problem isn't suffering. The problem is that you were never taught how to use it, and that's what we're going to uncover next. Because while suffering can break you, it can also forge you into something unbreakable, but only if you know how to wield it. Are you ready to see what happens when suffering is embraced instead of avoided? Imagine a world where no one is strong enough to endure hardship, a place where people collapse at the first sign of struggle, where resilience is seen as toxic, and where discomfort is treated like a disease. This world isn't some dystopian nightmare, it's the reality we are slowly creating. We have sanitized pain out of existence, convinced that a good life is a painless life, but in doing so, we've unknowingly walked into a trap, one where fragility is the new normal, and resilience is a dying art. But here's what no one is talking about. Avoiding suffering doesn't just make you weak, it makes you easy to control. When people lose the ability to endure discomfort, they become desperate for relief. They will do anything to escape, even if it means giving up their freedom. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World predicted this with chilling accuracy. A society obsessed with comfort becomes docile, willing to trade their autonomy for distractions, entertainment, and artificial happiness. And isn't that exactly what's happening today? We drown ourselves in digital illusions, feeding on the next dopamine hit, the next quick escape, anything to avoid facing real pain. We have become so addicted to comfort that we willingly accept our own enslavement. We no longer need oppressive regimes to control us. We control ourselves, shackled by our own fear of suffering. But it doesn't stop there. There is another darker consequence to rejecting suffering, one that most people never see coming. Suppressed suffering always returns. You can push it down. You can run from it. You can numb it with distractions. But suffering, like a shadow, never truly disappears. It waits. It festers. It grows in the unconscious, twisting into something far more dangerous. Carl Jung warned us about this. He called it the shadow, the dark repressed part of ourselves that we refuse to confront. When suffering is denied, it does not vanish. It transforms into anxiety, rage, self-hatred, and even cruelty. Look at the world today. Why are depression and anxiety skyrocketing, despite all the advances in medicine, therapy, and technology? Why do people who seem to have it all still feel empty? Why do so many lash out, consumed by resentment and nihilism? Because they were never taught how to suffer. Pain that is not faced consciously will return unconsciously, in self-destructive behaviors, addictions, or even violence. The avoidance of suffering creates a culture of resentment, where people blame the world for their pain instead of confronting it. This is why Nietzsche warned about the dangers of victimhood. He saw that when people refuse to take responsibility for their suffering, they seek revenge on reality itself. They demand that the world be remade in their image, one where hardship doesn't exist, where struggle is unfair, where every difficulty must be removed. But the world does not work that way. Reality is not soft. It does not bend to comfort seekers, and those who cannot endure suffering will always be at the mercy of those who can. So here's the final brutal truth. If you do not master suffering, you will be mastered by it. It will rule you in ways you do not even see. It will whisper in your mind, guiding your actions without you realizing. It will shape your fears, your insecurities, your failures. But here's the good news. There is a way out. Not by avoiding suffering, but by facing it, embracing it, and using it as fuel. Because suffering is not your enemy. It is your greatest source of strength. And in the next section, we will uncover exactly how to use it. Are you ready to turn your suffering into power? You have been lied to, not by a single person, not by a government or an institution, but by an entire cultural mindset, one that has convinced you that suffering is something to escape, something to avoid at all costs. But now you see the truth. Suffering is not your enemy. It is your awakening. And here's the radical shift. The rebellion against weakness begins the moment you stop running from pain. The moment you stop seeing yourself as a victim and instead ask, how can I use this? Because suffering, when harnessed correctly, does not destroy. It transforms. Step 1. Face the abyss without blinking. Carl Jung warned that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Why? Because looking into the darkness within, acknowledging your own pain, fears, and failures is terrifying. But this is where real power begins. You must willingly descend into your own suffering, not as a martyr, not as a victim, but as an observer. Instead of running from your pain, study it. Ask yourself, what is this suffering trying to teach me? What am I avoiding by distracting myself? What am I afraid to confront? The moment you stop resisting suffering, it loses its power over you. Instead of being something that happens to you, it becomes something that happens for you. Step 2. Reframe pain as your greatest teacher. The greatest minds in history, Nietzsche, Frankl, Aurelius, did not just endure suffering, they leveraged it. Nietzsche's philosophy of amor fati, love of fate, is the ultimate reframe. He believed that instead of merely accepting suffering, you should love it. Why? Because every hardship, every failure, every ounce of suffering is the raw material of greatness. Viktor Frankl, surviving the Holocaust, realized something most people never do. Suffering without meaning destroys you, but suffering with meaning makes you unbreakable. This is the secret no one tells you. Your suffering is the key to your purpose. Betrayal? It teaches you wisdom. Failure? It teaches you resilience. Loneliness? It teaches you self-reliance. Loss? It teaches you gratitude. When you assign meaning to suffering, it stops being an obstacle. It becomes fuel. Step 3. Stop seeking comfort. Seek resistance. Instead, modern society worships comfort. But what has comfort given us? A generation of people crippled by anxiety, unable to handle even minor inconveniences, paralyzed by the fear of struggle. The antidote? Seek resistance. If you're afraid of failure, put yourself in the situations where you might fail. If you fear rejection, face it over and over until it no longer owns you. If you avoid discomfort, intentionally seek it, knowing that every hardship sharpens you. Strength is not built in safety. It is built in fire. You do not become strong by avoiding pain. You become strong by walking through it. Step 4. Embrace the warrior mindset. There are only 2 types of people in the world. Those who allow suffering to break them. Those who use suffering to break their own limits. Which will you be? The warrior mindset is not about physical combat. It is about a refusal to be weak. It is about standing tall in the face of suffering and saying, you will not defeat me. You will make me stronger. Because here's the truth. Weakness is a choice. Strength is also a choice. Suffering can destroy you, or it can elevate you. You can be a slave to pain, or you can master it. The choice is yours. And now, as we approach the final realization, we reach the deepest truth of all, the one that redefines suffering forever. Are you ready to see what lies beyond pain? You have been through the fire. You have seen suffering not as an enemy, but as an instructor. You have understood what society refuses to accept, that pain is not a burden, but a gift. You have stood at the edge of the abyss, and instead of turning away, you looked into it. And now you are ready for the final truth, the truth that most will never grasp, because they are too afraid to suffer. Suffering is the gateway to transcendence. Every great transformation in human history, whether personal or collective, has been birthed in suffering. The caterpillar disintegrates before it becomes a butterfly. The sword must be hammered before it can cut through steel. The human soul must break before it can expand. Without suffering, there is no evolution. Without suffering, there is no wisdom. And here's the most profound paradox of all. When you fully accept suffering, you transcend it. This is the secret that saints, warriors, and mystics have always known. Suffering is only suffering when you resist it. The moment you stop seeing pain as something bad and start embracing it as part of your journey, it stops controlling you. It becomes neutral. It becomes fuel. Nietzsche called this becoming the Übermensch, the one who rises above suffering by giving it meaning. Buddhists call it nirvana, the cessation of suffering by detaching from it. Christ called it the narrow path, the road few have the strength to walk, but the only road that leads to true life. Every spiritual, philosophical, and psychological tradition agrees on one thing. If you try to escape suffering, it will hunt you forever. But if you embrace suffering, it will set you free. The final shift, turning pain into power. So where does that leave you? You now stand at a crossroads. One path leads back to comfort, to a life of avoiding pain, seeking pleasure, and staying within the limits that have been imposed upon you. A life of fragile happiness, dependent on circumstances beyond your control. The other path is uncertain. It is filled with challenges, struggle, and moments of deep doubt. But it is also the path of mastery, the path where suffering is transformed into wisdom, resilience, and ultimate freedom. The question is not, will I suffer? The question is, how will I use it? Will you let suffering make you bitter? Or will you let it make you unshakable? Will you curse your hardships? Or will you thank them for sharpening you? Will you run from pain? Or will you become the kind of person who stares pain in the face and says, "Thank you, I needed that"? The final thought: what lies beyond suffering? When you truly master suffering, something miraculous happens. You realize that suffering was never the real enemy. The real enemy was fear. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of discomfort, fear of facing the truth about yourself. And when you let suffering burn that fear away, what remains is something rare, something almost no one in this world possesses: a man or woman who is truly free. Because a person who does not fear suffering cannot be manipulated. A person who does not fear hardship cannot be broken. A person who does not fear struggle becomes unstoppable. And that is the ultimate realization. Suffering is not the end, it is the beginning.